Well, welcome to Life Talk, our monthly podcast covering all topics concerning the sanctity and dignity of life from conception to natural death. I'm Bishop John Dolan, your host, alongside Marina Salvador-Velazquez. Always glad to see you here, Marina, and she is with our Office for Respect Life Ministries. Our immigrant brothers and sisters who are so much more than just statistics you might hear. But they are people, our neighbors, who have fled economic hardship and violence and political instability. They're dealing with uncertainty and confusion and heartache amidst the actions taken by ICE and the current state of our immigration system. It's a system that hasn't been reformed in 40 years. As I pointed out in my June pastoral letter, in solidarity with the stranger, and I was so happy that Bishop Olmsted and Bishop Navarez also signed that letter because they truly believed in this as well. But today on this podcast, we're joined by two wonderful people, Joanna and Tony, and they're with the Kino Border Initiative, which works on both sides of the Mexico border to respond to the most critical needs of migrants. So we welcome you, both of you, and really glad to have you with us today. And I'm going to turn it over to Marina to maybe ask you to introduce yourselves.
Hi, Bishop. I'm very happy. Thank you, Joanna and Tony, for joining us. When I initially, I had been to Border Initiative before, and I had the privilege of seeing the location before it was remodeled. We were talking about this earlier. So I'm so happy to be here and to be joined in this conversation, Bishop.
Well, wonderful. Well, first of all, there are a couple of questions, I guess, that I would ask you for the viewers. What is Kino Border Initiative?
That's a good one to start with. Well, I'm Joanna Williams, and the executive director of Kino Border Initiative, and I've been there for 10 years. And in many ways, what that is has changed, and at the same time, it's maintained very the same for these 10 years. We've existed for about 16 years. We're a Catholic ministry that tries to advance migration with dignity. And what that means is providing humanitarian aid to migrants on the Mexican side of the border, so folks who've been deported or people who have fled violence. And then we also do the work of education to try to help the communities on both sides of the border understand the realities of migrants. And finally, we do advocacy in the U.S. and in Mexico so that we might have a more humane and just immigration system, and one that better aligns with Catholic social teaching.
Yeah, and I had the opportunity to go down there twice. Once when I first came on board, Father Bob Frambrini brought me on down. That was a great experience.
Your incognito visit.
I was incognito that time, yeah. And then the second time was for Las Posadas, and we'll get back to that in just a bit. But Tony, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got connected to Kino Border.
Well, thank you, and thank you for having me here today. I was telling Joanna, I originally been interested in the border. I kind of felt a calling to immigration because I was born and raised in Phoenix, and I knew a lot of immigrants growing up. And I would go down to the border, a camp down there, and just hike it to see. And I'd find these immigration stations, and they had water for the immigrants and things like that. And then one weekend, I saw a notice in our church's bulletin about a Kino Border Initiative immersion trip. And I said, boy, that sounds like maybe that's I'm being called to do that. So I signed up, and I went down with a group. Actually, it was a group that's sponsored by Jesuit West Corps, the Collaborative Organizing for Racial Equity. And we went down there, and I had a fantastic visit. They give you this great orientation about what you're going to see and what's expected, and then you go down to Nogales, Sonora, on Saturday morning, and we help serve the breakfast and the juice to the immigrants, and then we kind of mingle with them and talk with them and listen to their stories. And one of the things they try to do is to let these immigrants know that we value them, we try to treat them with dignity. We listen to them. We let them know they're heard. We let them know they're seen. And I think it was just an incredibly rewarding weekend.
Yeah, I think that was a great experience for me too. I mean, having gone down there first with my initial visit, and then the Las Posadas, and just to see the way in which the two countries can work together, but two countries where most of those who were working together, they do this because of the faith that has been built into their lives, or that they have welcomed into their lives. And so it just becomes a natural expression of their faith when they cross the border and they participate in, say, the Las Posadas, or they start to do some up and down lifting there at your location on both sides of the border, which is it's pretty impressive, I have to say, But tell me a little bit about maybe a day-to-day activity that you would have to encounter, and what is the difference, say, between the time when I had experience at Las Posadas and what is going on now? Maybe how has your day changed from then?
It's changed significantly. I think mostly because at the time that you were there in December of last year, it feels very recently, but most people's mentality or thought was they're in Nogales for the moment, and maybe they'll have a chance to seek protection in the United States. So mostly we were working with families who had fled from southern Mexico or from Venezuela. Yes. And they still had this thought of maybe I won't be in Nogales for the long term. Right. So a lot of our day-to-day was more focused on humanitarian assistance and making sure they had the food that they needed, the clothing, medical attention. And now the reality we're working with is so different, because those families that were there in December, and unfortunately I have to say that many of the families that you met in December are still in Nogales today because they didn't have that chance to seek protection. But we're also receiving all of these parents, really dads and moms, who are being deported from the Phoenix area or even from as far north as Washington State, that then they get to Nogales and they're realizing, I have to figure out what my new life here looks like.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So for people, the plate of food has become less important. They still come for meals because in many ways meals are community.
Yeah.
But it's really for the community at Kino, and it's for the legal orientations. We've got a typical day is our Mexican attorney being very, very busy trying to help people get documents on the Mexican side.
Right.
Because many of these people from other countries don't have even legal work permission in Mexico. And then our social workers trying to help people find jobs. And really, it's more of a community center trying to help people integrate into the local community at this moment versus just a place to provide humanitarian assistance.
Yeah. And how have you, Tony, seen kind of that change in?
Yeah, it's interesting. When Kino initially started, it was people being deported into Nogales. And then it became sort of the mission, mostly families fleeing violence and extortion and trouble from their home country. And now it's circled back to people being deported to Mexico. I was relating to Joanna, it's hard to imagine a child brought to the United States at the age of 2 and raised in the United States, and at the age of 21 being deported to Mexico.
Right.
They've never lived there, really. And they have to find work. They have to connect with the community. And that's where Kino really steps up, and it just provides amazing support for those people.
Yeah, I mean, Marina, you, I know have experienced some of this whole way of life of being of immigration and connection with people who are struggling. I'm sure there have been stories that you have heard. I've heard some myself, but I'm sure you've heard some stories within our community here in Phoenix about maybe levels of fear and levels of wonder.
Certainly, Bishop. I was sharing with Tony and Joanna, and I'm an immigrant myself, so I grew up in California and I was born in Mexico, and my family decided to immigrate here, and we faced challenges. Whatever we hear about fear, about uncertainty, about the unknown, about what would happen tomorrow. My family and I felt that before, and having to to come to a country where it's not your home. I mean, I was younger, but my siblings, the oldest ones were older. My parents were way older too. And to come to a country where you don't, in a way, you face discrimination, language barriers, and challenges on a daily basis, and get to a point where now you have the opportunity to help other people, right? I'm a citizen now, but in between, you get to see. I mean, I grew up in a farm field area down by the Central Coast, and I remember hearing on the radio, don't go to this radio stations, don't go to this cross streets because there's ICE is there, or immigration border patrol is there, or don't go to these stores, or don't go to these shopping centers. And everyone was communicating with other people to know where not to go, because what if they catch you? And then now you hear about people being afraid of showing up to getting out of their homes because what if they get caught outside? My sister faced that recently because she had a situation unresolved, and because of that situation, then it was very challenging for us. It was a moment of uncertainty as well. Thankfully, things change and it's different, but yeah, it is the uncertainty, the unknown, what's going to happen. But the good thing about it is that the church, right, the hope, faith, is what keeps us going, and what gives us the hope of God is with us, and people like Kino Border and other organizations locally too are there to assist and to help.
There was an example it just most recently that was shared with me of someone who is a born and raised here, but is Latino, and works as an assistant to one of our groundskeepers. And he was at a major outlet, parked next to an unmarked car, didn't think anything of it in the parking lot. Went in, came out, and there was an ICE officer, who basically detained him for a half an hour and shared and basically asked him, who are you, where are you going, and all of that. And he says, well, I'm a U.S. citizen. I was born and raised here. This is my ID, everything. Then he started to ask him what high school he went to, and it was clearly a violation of his human dignity. Everything about it was a violation of his human. And he just went away just so angry and yet paralyzed. And when I heard about that, I felt myself just boil up. I just felt there's something absolutely inhumane about what is happening. And that's why the U.S. bishops, there isn't a single bishop, and we have our ideological differences on other matters, but there isn't a single U.S. bishop who is standing for what is happening today, because on one side it is just out and out racism. On the other hand, on the other side, it is just fear. It's about, we've got to protect our borders, and no matter what. And well, there are other ways that we can do that. Like I said in the introduction, it's been 40 years since we've had any immigration change. And I understand that there are some people who will say from the start, you cannot break the law. All right, so crossing. But when I was in high school, we had just a basic moral and ethics class that said, of course, you can never steal. But if you're absolutely hungry and you're desperate and you're going to die and your family's going to die without food, you're going to take to stealing. And that's what is happening to the people who are coming here. Nobody comes to the United States because they hate their country. I don't think. I think people come to the U.S. because it's a safe haven from persecution, from horrible treatment, from a lack of just basic human dignity. They're starving, and their children are starving. So to me, that's a piece that we should always remember, that of course, you never want to break a law, but then maybe if the law is so so strict, that maybe we have to change that, and that's 40 years. My goodness, we haven't even, but it's become so politicized.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But at any rate, so what can we do for you?
Well, I think kind of you mentioned about just kind of letting your blood boil a little bit of what I hope is that people wouldn't just tune this out and say, oh gosh, that sounds like a tough situation,
Mm-hmm.
but really allow themselves to be open to what is God's invitation and what is God's voice in that. And that's what I so appreciate about Tony's testimony is, I mean, he just opened a church bulletin and said, well, maybe God is calling me here. You know, there's a little more to it, but I think your pastoral letter put it so beautifully. If we need to pray, we need to provide pastoral accompaniment, and we need to act in peaceful public witness. And there's actually a Benedictine sister, the prioress, Sister Linda, who participated in her first public witness ever in her entire life by going down to the detention center at Eloy and praying for the folks who were in detention, because we've seen really terrible conditions right now in detention of rotten food and people being insulted, and there was a fire that they didn't evacuate people properly and people were passing out from smoke inhalation. And Sister Linda, her whole life, has never participated in a protest and said, you know what, I think that I can do this. I think that I'm being invited. And your pastoral letter contributed that. So.
Oh, good.
But I think this is a moment where we need to have that openness and recognize that we as a community can change the course of history. And it's going to require a little bit of courage. And it's going to require keeping our hearts soft so that we can really hear God's voice, especially through our brothers and sisters who have had migration experiences. But I'd invite you to be open to what is it that's in your church bulletin? What is it that Kino Border Initiative is putting out? And how can I take action in this moment?
Yeah, I think that's a really important piece of this, is that to keep our hearts open. You shared with me just before, in your work, if you don't, what was it? If the day you don't shed a tear is the day you need to leave this job, because you're dealing with people whose hearts are wrenched. They go to a dentist office, and the next thing they know, they're in Mexico, and they're not even from Mexico. Things like that, but they're dropped in there, and then they go to your place, and they're just wondering, how do I get in touch with my family? How, do I know if my kids up there in the U.S. are safe? I don't know that. It's so sad, and it just must break your heart. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that one of the things that sometimes we run the risk of falling into is feeling that the realities at the border are so distant of, those poor people over there in Nogales. I'm a mom, and I've got 2 kids, and there was a dad just the other day that was deported who has a 4-year-old, which is the age of my child. I think the invitation is to recognize that that folks who Kino is receiving are just like you and me. And so to cultivate that connection, I think that's something Tony's experienced as
there are neighbors, and we're called to love our neighbor.
Plain and simple.
Yeah,
Jesus doesn't ask us to ask someone to show their card before we feed them or clothe them or give them water or any of that, right?
And another thing that I say we could start by doing as well is looking at our own parish communities, right?
Exactly.
We have many undocumented, many relatives who their family is unknown, the location is unknown. And many people are struggling, and having that openness of heart and seeing what where the need is, and also I remember going to Kino and taking some items, toiletries as well, clothing, short pants. Back then it was Father Sean Carroll, who was the executive director. Now he's the very reverend of the Jesuits somewhere else, right?
Yeah,
but had the experience of visiting the women's shelter that you guys have there, and how they fundraise to help them who flee away from violence, domestic violence, and so thank you for what you do, and I do encourage people to support Kino Border Initiative and the work that you do.
Thank you.
And if there's anything else that we can do, please, let us know. And of course, we will post this as well. And then there are a number of people who watch this who are unable to get out of their homes. So they're not going to be able to get to Kino, or they're not going to be able to do some of the up and down lifting, but they can offer prayer. And prayer is essential. the older I get, the more I realize that is absolutely essential. If it's not about God, then it ain't about anything. We're gonna miss the boat. So, but I really do appreciate the two of you coming here, and appreciate you, Marina. I think this is such an important piece of this life talk, because what we're talking about is life between conception to natural death. It isn't. Life is life, and it's someone says, what's the most important life? Every person is the most important part of this life and this gospel of life. Children, adults, and middle age, and all of that, and old people, everyone belongs. And every culture belongs to this family, and I don't get how people don't get that. And maybe you could offer one last vignette or another little point, or something that I'm missing that we should be hitting.
Well, you mentioned earlier that the immigration, unfortunately, has been weaponized by politics, and it makes a very difficult climate. And that's one of the things I love about Kino is getting people down there to see the reality rather than what's been fed to them by the media.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you'll have the chance, if anyone would like to subscribe to our newsletter, every month we're releasing stories. We also do some videos and other chances, again, for you to see that the folks who are at Kino are more like us than right. different. And I just wanted to circle back briefly to your comment around the law, because what people might not understand, there's a couple of things that people might not understand about immigration. One is how much people like their home communities.
Right.
I remember sitting with some moms who talked to, and we used to have this spring where we would bring the kids so they could splash in the water. Until then, organized crime took over and they couldn't go to school. So people don't leave because they wanted to, it's because they really feel forced. But the other is that people have this real deep respect for law, really want to respect the U.S. system, and there's sort of this awe of our democracy, of, wow, in the U.S. the laws matter. Right. And that's why people have tried to apply for asylum through legal channels, and unfortunately there just isn't a legal channel left. Right. There isn't a way to follow the law, and I think that's when we need to reflect and say, well, what does the law mean if it's not possible to follow it?
Yeah, that's a really good insight. What does the law mean if it isn't possible to follow it? Mm-hmm. And that's the issue that we're facing. It's just amazing. It's going to be, I don't know. I think, unfortunately, we're going to be, we just have to get on our knees and pray a little bit more about it. But in addition to that, speak about it. And that's what you're doing. And I appreciate that you did come forward here today to share this story, I think, and your stories. I'm behind Kino Border Initiative, but I more importantly, I'm behind some kind of reformation of this law. The bottom line is, it doesn't appear as though we have anything to grant people asylum, and that's really unfortunate. I think you hit it on the head. So. In the meantime, I just want to say thank you for joining us for Life Talk, and I hope and pray that you watch this segment and join us for all the other wonderful things that we continue to provide. Thank you, and God bless you.